Hello everyone, I'm Elfals, and welcome to another match analysis for the Newport Noctiles in Season 12 of the Uber Club League. Last time I covered my match against the Boulder Bulldors in Week 4, a long one that ended up in a 4-0 win for me to go up 4-0 for the season, before taking my bye in Week 5. This time I'm playing in Week 6 against Josh and his Zanesville Zigzagoons, looking to keep the winning streak going. I've played Josh a few times, we exchanged a few games in the early VGC seasons of the league, and then we met in the final week of Season 8, where I grabbed a 6-0 win against him thanks to the efforts of Heatran, Tangrowth, and S-Cavalier. He's back this season, admittedly struggling a bit with a 1-4 record, but that one win against the Troopers was pretty impressive, showing that he's got a team with some pretty good threats. Josh's team consists of Dugtrio, Espeon, Mimikyu, Rotom Wash, first round pick Goldengo, Breloom, Cloyster, Pelipper, Abomasnow, Garganacl, and Greedent. The team looks a little weird, but there really is a strong core going on at the top. Josh has shown off Goldengo is an amazing attacker, supported by Breloom for fighting type offense, Rotom and Garganacl for extra resistances and bulk, and a Shell Smash Cloyster to clean things up. I did say the strong core was at the top though, let's take an in-depth look at the rest of the team. Greedent is, well, Greedent. Josh has favored bringing it a lot, and I mean, I get it, it's a very fun pick. Belly Drum with either Cheek Pouch or Gluttony, along with surprisingly good bulk, mean that there are some actual use cases for this. But especially against my physically defensive team, the offense just isn't there for this. I think the most threatening thing this could do to me would be to run Counter as a surprise damage dealer, but even that's just too niche. Pelipper's also down here, and I'm not sure what the purpose is. Rain powers up itself as well as two other water types on the team, but that alone doesn't feel worth a team slot. I guess this could be a physically defensive answer to Great Tusk, and that's kind of nice, but it's about the extent of its use in my opinion, and that's not too hard to answer for me. Abomasnow is another weather setter without an obvious abuser, but I do see more of a niche for it. It can stand on its own as an Aurora Veil setter, and Snow also boosts the defense of Cloyster for easier setup. It's also a decent bulky attacker, especially with Terra as an option, but it's still slow and riddled with weaknesses before that Terra, meaning that it loses to most of my offensive options, unless it does bring that good Terra option, which just would be tough to justify. I also don't feel like Snow is all that useful, since I'm also cutting Cloyster out of the top 6. Josh's one win this season can be mostly attributed to a Shell Smash sweep, yes, but I have one of the best defensive answers to Shell Smash Cloyster in the game with an Underwear Dondozo, so I don't think it has that opportunity this time. And lastly, I'll pretty solidly put Dugtrio as just missing the cut. Its main use would be to trap and beat Iron Moth or Tyranitar, but it loses just about every other matchup one-on-one, unless it just wants to be a revenge killer to pick off weakened threats. I think how much it comes depends on how afraid Josh is of Iron Moth, but even if it does show up, I have some counterplay to its trapping, including 3 different Pokemon off the ground and just as many physical walls on my team. That leaves the top 6 starting with Garganacl. Its strengths are obvious. Absolutely massive bulk, an ability that protects it from status, and a great move pool including Stealth Rock and Salt Cure to force residual damage onto my team, and either Iron Defense or Curse for setup, and a likely Terrestrialization to gain a great defensive typing. Salt Cure definitely forces a Covert Cloak for something on my team, which is annoying, but outside of that, if we ignore Salt Cure thanks to that Cloak, it's just a wall that attacks off the physical side, which is typically not that threatening to my team. I actually have a lot of ways to deal with this. Up next is Espeon, which isn't typically that big a threat, but it sure has a good matchup here. Outspeeds most of my team, hits hard on the special side with Psychic and Fairy moves. This is actually pretty hard for my team to answer defensively, thanks to that combination of speed, power, and coverage. It's also Josh's only method of deterring hazards since his team has 0 removal options, so this feels like a must-bring to prevent me from stacking hazards that freely. Because of that, I'll be packing some hazard setters that Espeon will not want to be switching in on. Mimikyu is next, and this is a threat that affects how I build both on offense and defense. Disguise offers a free turn of setup with Swords Dance, and from there Mimikyu can hit pretty hard with those stab moves, so I'll need to get some good defensive answers to it. Disguise also offers an emergency stop to my sweeping threats, meaning that anything I set up for a sweep needs to be able to take a hit or two from Mimikyu, or will need Disguise to be broken first. This definitely cut off a few of my sweeping options in prep. We also have Rotom Wash, which threatens to switch in and threaten out my water types, while otherwise volt switching around and spreading burns with Will-O-Wisp. I have some good answers to this, most notably my own Grass-type Rotom, but Rotom Wash will never not be annoying to deal with. That leaves us with 2 big offensive threats, the first being Breloom. This thing has a massive attack stat with very strong moves to hit me with. Priority Mach Punch, Bullet Seed, Bulldoze, and Rock Tomb, all boosted by Technician, along with a nuke of a close combat, and Swords Dance for setup as well as Spore to give it that setup opportunity. I do have a couple of pretty nice switch-ins to this that invalidate Spore, but I will have to be aware of the raw power that Breloom has. Although that's nothing compared to the power of Goldengo. Special attackers are really tough for my team to handle, and Goldengo's stab combo of Make It Rain and Shadow Ball is enough to hit my whole team for great damage. On top of that, it can choose whatever coverage it feels like to make switching in on it even harder. Dazzling Gleam KOs Hydreigon, Psyshock KOs Iron Moth, and Focus Blast invalidates Tyranitar even more than Make It Rain would. And then its support move pool includes Trick, which could cripple a wall, Nasty Plot for setup, and even Recover, which could prevent me from just chipping it down over the course of the battle. This is a giant threat. I think the way I deal with this depends a lot on the set. I can exploit a speed stat if it's anything but Choice Scarf, and if it is Scarf, I'm going to have to make some smart switches around it as it locks into its move of choice. This alone has warped my team building along with a few other threats, so I'm going to go over the options I didn't bring real quick. Kilowatt Roll was tempting with the possibility of Rain going up in this matchup, as well as having the ability to outspeed and heavily damage both Dugtrio and Espeon, but it's just a little too frail in a matchup that I'll probably be playing a little more defensively overall. Similar thoughts apply to Poltegeist, which looks like a good Shell Smash sweeper, but its sweep would be cut short by just a few too many things. Garganacl is a bulky ghost resist no matter what type it tears into. Mimikyu has Shadow Sneak and Disguise. Breloom has Mach Punch in case I am actually Terrasalize myself. Espeon outspeeds if it has a Scarf, and Greedent is a shockingly bulky ghost immunity, so that many factors, I'll just have to pass on the teacup. Furgraph doesn't look too bad here, but it also doesn't look all that good. It's a ghost immunity for Goldengo and a grass immunity with Sap Sipper for Breloom, but it doesn't exactly take hits from either very well considering it's neutral to their other stab moves, and it just doesn't do enough otherwise to justify a spot. Tyranitar was pretty tough to leave behind given its great matchup into Espeon, but it's afraid of just about every other matchup on the team. With the exceptions of Garganacl and Greedent, every single other one of my opponent's Pokemon has super effective stab into Tyranitar. That's kind of insane and adds up to a pretty bad matchup overall. And lastly, I'm going to pass on Fortress, my most intuitive answer to Breloom. I would have thought this would be an automatic bring to the matchup with Overcoat, but I actually found another consistent switch into Breloom with Spore, and Fortress doesn't do that much else for me. As a hazard setter, it's just a little too passive for my tastes when Espeon could switch in and bounce back the hazards, and otherwise it loses a few too many matchups. Rotom has no problem switching in, and neither does Goldengo, and Garganacl hits us with a big Salt Cure, and since I can't really justify running Covert Cloak on Fortress over Leftovers, we'll have to rely on some other sources of bulk and hazards. So that's actually going to start with Dondozo as my wall of choice. This is pretty simple. I see a strong setup everywhere on my opponent's team, so an unaware user was a pretty easy bring into the matchup. With our mostly specially defensive EV spread, we can switch in on Shell Smash Cloyster, Curse Garganacl, Swords Dance Mimikyu, Belly Drum Greedent, and Calm Mind Espeon, and avoid the 3-hit KO from all of them. The Covert Cloak is of course for Garganacl, and it really doesn't do that much else for me, but it can help to prevent Psychic Special Defense drops from Espeon, among a few other niche RNG effects. As for the moveset itself, it's a mono-attacking Curse Rest Hawk set. With the right opportunity, this could be my go-for-game sweeper with a few Curse boosts, since most of my opponent's roster fails to 3-hit KO me between rests. The only things that really stop a sweep would be Trick from any of Goldengo, Rotom, or Espeon, or Electric moves from Rotom or Goldengo. Trick would be very bad if I want to consistently check what I need to check, so until I get confirmation that there are no choice item users trying to trick me, I'll be avoiding those matchups. And as for the Electric moves, that's part of the reason for my Terra type here. Dondozo is Terra Electric, which keeps the resistance to Goldengo's Make It Rain, while changing out our Grass weakness for a neutrality and our Electric weakness for a resist. In exchange, Dondozo does get a ground weakness, but that only really matters against Dugtrio, which still doesn't hit that hard, and we still just one-hit KO it with Waterfall. Speaking of which, the last aspect of them is the move choice. Water coverage was the least resisted overall, but I went with Waterfall over Liquidation specifically because of the higher PP, clocking in at 24 as opposed to Liquidation 16. This might actually matter if I go for a sweep, since Cloyster and Rotom are pretty big water resists that I'll need to chip away at with a lot of moves. So a Curse Sweep is definitely possible, but for the most part this is here to prevent any of Josh's setup sweepers from taking over, so I won't be going for that sweep unless I'm absolutely sure it's safe to do so. Up next is going to be Hydreigon with a Choice Scarf, which is also my Stealth Rocker that absolutely threatens out Espeon. I can afford the move slot since Dark is such a spammable type into this matchup, so I'm just going with Dark Pulse with Flash Cannon thrown in there as all the coverage I need to hit things like Mimikyu, Garganacl, and Breloom harder. U-Turn is nice momentum, and we have enough speed to outrun Scarf Goldengo. I wanted to outrun Scarf Rotom as well, but I wanted the Modest nature more, so I'm okay with giving up that for the extra power, because Modest Dark Pulses really do some great damage. The Terra type is Steel, which both powers up Flash Cannon and gives me a better defensive profile against Espeon, or anything with a Fairy move for that matter. That's pretty much it. It's a simple set, but I expect it to be pretty effective as a Dark Pulse spammer and emergency check to Goldengo. Speaking of Goldengo checks though, we're bringing Iron Moth with a lot of special defense investment to switch directly into Goldengo's stab moves. The investment allows me to switch in on Goldengo and take 2 Shadow Balls while hitting back hard with Flamethrower. Obviously Iron Moth gets folded by a Psyshock, but I'm just going to have to count on Goldengo not making that read on the switch in. That's risky, but it's kind of the best I've got for it. Aside from that, I have speed for Mimikyu plus a few extra points for a speed creeping Espeon, and Flamethrower and Energy Ball get perfect neutral coverage with no fire or dragon types on my opponent's side. Morning Sun allows me to heal up and switch in on Goldengo multiple times, and Toxic Spikes look great if I can get them set up. With no removal to be seen, they'd be permanent, and they can really cripple anything that wants to use its bulk to stick around for a few extra turns. Poison would cut down on health for Cloyster and Abomasnow, making a Dondozo sweep a little easier, and in general it pushes everything into Dark Pulse range from Hydreigon. As for the item, I thought about running Shed Shell to escape from Dugtrio, but I decided that boots are too important, with Garganacl probably getting up rocks very easily in this matchup. So instead, to deal with Dugtrio, I'm running Terra Grass, which should allow Iron Moth to easily tank an Earthquake and KO back with Energy Ball. This also helps in other matchups as well, taking super effective hits from Scarf Rotom, Goldengo, and Espeon and turning them into resists or neutralities. Now, Iron Moth is a decent answer to Breloom actually, but I mentioned in my planning that I had a much more reliable switch in, and that's actually going to be Azumarill. Now, you might have some questions about this set. I can explain. This is a pure defensive utility moveset, using Sap Sipper instead of huge power to be an amazing switch into Breloom. That's the main point. I just needed something that can sit in front of Breloom without taking too much damage, so the moveset is going for any utility I can get out of it. Draining Kiss does pretty solid damage back to Breloom, and decent damage into the team overall, and combined with leftovers, it should help with longevity. Surf is our coverage move, which smacks Dugtrio and hits the only fairy resist in Goldengo. It's still not doing that much damage though, so to be a little more productive on a Goldengo switch-in, I'm running Light Screen as a way to get my own answers in a little more freely. And lastly, Copycat is in the last slot. The main point of this is that Sap Sipper Azumarill also happens to be a great Abomasnow counter, so a Copycat allows Azumarill to switch in as Abomasnow goes for Aurora Veil, and then use Aurora Veil for itself, since I am EV to outspeed uninvested Abomasnow. It's very, very niche, but could potentially be very useful, and other uses could come up. Imagine switching in on an Abomasnow Leech Seed and copying that as it switches out, or throwing Garganacl's Salt Cure right back at it for chip damage. It's obviously gimmicky, but I didn't have another move to run in this slot, so why not? The Terra type is Fairy in case for some reason I need stronger Draining Kisses, but I'd probably like to keep my original dual typing. And the EVs are optimized to take physical attacks from Breloom and special attacks from Abomasnow. Like I said, this is primarily a utility role to check Breloom. A weird set for Azu, but one that I think can put in some work. We're going to keep the utility train rolling with Assault Vest Great Tusk as a way to effectively beat a few things. It gives me one more explicit way to beat Goldengo, since Great Tusk barely outspeeds it and cleanly KOs with Headlong Rush. The Assault Vest plus some special defense investment allow Great Tusk to be an emergency switch-in. We're AV to avoid the one-hit KO from a Choice Specs Make It Rain. That's the main point of the set, but it has plenty of utility otherwise. Great Tusk outspeeds everything up through Rotom Wash, and threatens gigantic damage onto almost all of my opponent's roster with just its stab combo. The only resist would be Pelipper and Air Balloon Goldengo, and I'm more concerned about the latter, so I'm going with Knockoff as a strong way to hit it. Lastly, we of course have Rapid Spin. Great Tusk is noted in OU as being one of the few hazard removers that can easily KO Goldengo, and we're making full use of that here, as well as the ability to threaten Josh's best rocker with Garganacl. The Terra type here is Ground, which powers up Headlong Rush and sheds our Psychic and Fairy weaknesses for important matchups like Espeon. It's another utility set, but we've had Great Tusk get some unexpected sweeps off, so will it do it again? We'll see. And to wrap the team up, we have Rotom Mow. And the main point of this set is to pivot into either Rotom Wash or Pelipper before firing back with a strong attack. Leaf Storm and Thunderbolt get surprisingly good coverage in this matchup, only resisted by the two grass types, neither of which want to take repeated hits. Nasty Plot allows Rotom to hit even harder, with plenty of setup opportunities. Volt Switch is a great safe pivot out of those grass types, and Terra Electric allows for stronger electric moves, while the EV spread outspeeds Goldengo while having enough special attack to one-hit KO max HP Rotom Wash with Leaf Storm. That's about it for this set. It's pretty standard, but it looks like it'll be pretty effective. That's going to be it for the team. It ended up being pretty simple for the most part, just bringing 6 of my 7 top picks from the draft. We're set up to play a pretty defensive game with mostly defensive items and the Azumarill set of all time, so let's see how it works out. Everything that I expected except Pelipper subs in for Rotom Wash. Fair enough. This works. I'm relieved to see Dugtrio won't be terrorizing my Iron Moth, and Greenit being left behind is oddly enough kind of a surprise. As for the lead slot, I'm not really sure what Josh would want to lead with here. He has a lot of decent threats, so I'm just going to lock in Rotom Mow as a scout and a general neutral matchup into just about anything. Good luck, have fun to Josh. And there's that Espeon, potentially very threatening, but I'm actually okay with this matchup. Like I said, I'm mostly here to scout things out, so I'll just Volt Switch and see what's going on here. It's Calm Mind, very aggressive on turn 1. Well, I have a few options to deal with this, but I'm going to choose Hydreigon. Based on the Volt Switch damage, it looks like the Scarf Dark Pulse will KO here, so that's going to be my play. Unless the item is, of course, Leftovers, which probably pushes Dark Pulse into an unfavorable roll to kill for me. This probably wasn't the best switch then, but it's also not the worst. I still have plenty of options. I thought about going Terra Steel here with the Dark Pulse to keep myself safe from the likely Fairy move in return, but I'd rather not use that option up quite yet. Instead, I'm just going to U-turn out to my other answer. That's actually going to do some pretty good damage, and Dondozo comes in to only take 19% from the Dazzling Gleam. From here, if Josh wants to sack this, I'll take the KO, but he's actually just going to Morning Sun up. Waterfall basically just negates that recovery. Okay, well, I'm just going to curse once in case he tries to stall me out, but his next move is actually going to be the Stored Power. Nice tech to be unaware, but you are not boosted enough for that. Waterfall should net me some good damage now, and he switches out actually to Goldengo that comes to take it. That's almost half of its health gone, which is pretty great. But this is a matchup I wanted to avoid. Goldengo could throw off a very strong special attack right now, or I described it in the team builder how afraid I was of Trick coming from a choice set. Because of that, I'll just go out to my dedicated answer. Iron Moth can come in, and there's the Trick, trading my boots for choice specs. You know, if something had to take that Trick, I think this is the best case scenario for me. I get to click a specs boosted move now, and it's a choice between Flamethrower or Energy Ball. Flamethrower would of course take out the Goldengo in front of me, but I would be very, very surprised if Josh just sat there and let that happen. So I'm going to Energy Ball to cover any switching or maybe the Terrestrialization. And that is going to pay off as he switches in Garganacl and takes 83% before Leftovers. And I'm just going to go for it again here. Worst case, he switches out to a Grass Resist to take it, but my priority now is stopping Garganacl from getting off the recover. I won't have to worry about that though, since it'll just go down on the next attack. That's a big threat out of the way. And then Espeon is the revenge. And this feels a little weird to me. Yes, Psychic moves are super effective, but Espeon's Psychic move of choice is the currently 20 base power stored power. So, more Energy Balls it is. Morning Sun does not heal enough for you. Energy Ball is doing 60%. And Espeon is just going to have to throw out a very weak stored power before going down. That is another big threat out of the way to Iron Moth. The fun is going to have to end though, with Pelipper switching in, and not even a Terra Grass Energy Ball would guarantee the KO here if it's max HP. That said, I don't think I would be punished too hard for doing that, but I have a dedicated check to this anyway, might as well do that. Rotom can come in very easily, and we're going to take the knockoff, a bit annoying with the Leftovers being removed, but now Volt Switch is super free, nothing wants to take it, so Pelipper is just going to go down here, and I get to bring Hydreigon back in, mostly just to give myself the option to pivot again with U-turn. That's going to pan out pretty well, I think, as Mimikyu comes in to revenge. I hesitated for a second with the potential of a Choice Scarf Mimikyu that would outspeed me, but that's just so unlikely, right? U-turn out is going to be pretty free to break the skies, and Dondozo is my check to this, so it will just come in as it goes for Swords Dance. Scary, but not so much in front of an unaware wall. Although it does look like I'm barely in 2-hit KO range of Life Orb Mimikyu, so I'm going to have to rest up first just in case. As Mimikyu actually decides to boost again, yeah, that's not going to get you anywhere. Next turn, Play Rough, yeah, 29%. And my follow-up Sleep Talk is going to call Waterfall actually and bring it down into Life Orb range thanks to that Rain boost. That does mean that Mimikyu is going to knock itself out with whatever move it goes for, which is Shadow Claw. And then my Sleep Talk actually is going to call Curse. Very cool. I won't complain about these Sleep Talk turns. But now Goldengo is in, and at this point, the game's wrapping up. I could probably stay in and rest up here, but a Dondozo sweep from here would be an uphill battle between this Goldengo and that Breloom sitting in the back. I might as well just switch to something that beats Goldengo a little more directly, and hey, why not Great Tusk? But we might as well push the KO leader a little higher on the leaderboards. Switch in on the Shadow Ball for less than half thanks to our Assault Vest, and now we're pretty free to go for a headlong rush right into the Breloom switch in, and we're still fine. It's going to reveal at the end of the turn here the Toxic Orb, so a non-technician Mach Punch wouldn't even come close to a KO here, and I definitely outspeed, so close combat away. And then it's only one Mon left. Goldengo switches in, and we're free to finish that off with a headlong rush to take the 6-0 win against the Zigzagoons. Good game to Josh. This was a pretty quick match, so I don't think I need to go super in-depth at the end here, but I'm going to go ahead and award MVP to Iron Moth just for the value of grabbing 2 important KOs immediately after absorbing the trick from Goldengo. That's a lot of use, though Dondozo is also a big player in this game. I'd say the team came together pretty well. I just had to make pretty intuitive plays, mostly just switching in to dedicated answers to my opponent's threats. Also played without terrestrializing for the second week in a row. I'm just finding that I've been trying to conserve that option for tough spots where I really can't make other plays, and I mean, I just didn't find myself in that situation here. That's going to be a wrap for week 6. I am now 5-0 going into the last 3 weeks. Next week puts me up against Joey and the Akron Agrons, definitely the biggest challenge yet as he's sitting at a 4-1 record with his threatening team. Join me next time for what's sure to be a great match. See you then.